Well, it's New York City like no one's ever seen it before. It has more confirmed cases and more deaths than any other city in the States, or North America for that matter. New York is essentially on lockdown, and the hospitals and healthcare workers are having trouble keeping up as more patients flood in and supplies run low. Chad McDonald is from Annapolis County and has been living in New York off and on for 14 years. We reached him yesterday at his home on West 45th Street, about a 10-minute walk from Times Square. He's been homeschooling his son with all schools closed there now. Good morning, Chad.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you this morning?
Well, I'm fine. Health-wise, my family and I are doing just great. For the most part, we are just inside. We are taking the stay-at-home order seriously, and obviously we live in the middle of Manhattan. We're right in the middle of all of this, so it's something that we're taking very seriously. Yeah.
And so, what evidence do you see around you in Manhattan of how Manhattan's changed?
Well, it's creepy. People just aren't on the street anymore. Where we live, we are next door to my son's school, and across the street is Beacon High School, which is one of the more well-regarded educational facilities in Manhattan. Our apartment looks out over 44th Street, and usually at this time of day, it is choked full of traffic. People just pouring up and down the street. And I look out now, and there's nothing.
And what is your sense of how people are coping there, or what the mood is when you do encounter people maybe on your grocery runs or as you call them, supply runs now?
Yeah, no, the verbiage has definitely changed. There's no more just running to the store for that one thing. It's now a supply run. You have to plan ahead of time what it is you're going to get and make sure that you get those things. When you encounter people on the streets, it's odd. New York has a thing called the game face, where you just have a, resting bee face, I guess is another way to put it, where you just have a expression where, don't mess with me. It's a standard what people do. Now people are a lot more aware of you. You see them far less frequently. You see a lot of people wearing masks. You may have seen stories about how masks and protective equipment, PPE, is hard to come by here for healthcare professionals, let alone the average person. And so every once in a while, you'll see something very bizarre. The last run I did a few days ago, I passed someone wearing a Star Wars mask, an actual Kylo Ren from the new movie. So it's creepy and eerie, bizarre, and mostly just sad.
Do you see evidence of the health care crisis there with, 40,000 people who are infected there? Do you hear sirens? Do you see emergency vehicles?
Well, I'm not far from the Javits Center, and that's now a field hospital. And the hospital ship, the USS Comfort, is berthed 5 blocks away. It's hard to judge whether I'm seeing more emergency vehicles because there's no traffic. It is more pronounced when you see them.
And what is the hospital ship, Chad?
That is ostensibly to create more hospital space for patients who are not suffering from COVID-19. The idea being, of course, to keep the patients separated from the infected. Whether or not that's going to remain the case, I don't know. There is debate raging over it should be for COVID-19 patients as well. But yeah, it is a federal ship. It was promised to come here some weeks ago, and it finally arrived on Monday.
New York has a lot of sports teams, and all the seasons for those are suspended right now. How has that changed life for you?
Well, personally, that's affected us quite greatly. The Yankees were a lot of the reason why I wanted to come to New York in the first place. And, Yankees, Rangers, Giants, Knicks. My little boy is very, very active and loves sports. He plays hockey every Saturday. There's the Canadian in me. And to have all of that gone is, I don't want to say it's salt in the wound, but it's really making the isolation a lot more difficult than that. That was something that we got a lot of pleasure out of, and it's just all gone.
There's the political side of this, too, a conversation around the politics and how the White House and the administration has been handling the outbreak in what is now a pandemic. What are your thoughts about how this has been handled?
First of all, I've got to say that although I was never a big fan of the governor of New York, Cuomo, I've got to say I'm super impressed with the leadership he's shown. He's gone to bat for New York again and again and again. But the reason he's had to do that is because of how badly and botched this response was by the federal government. And I mean, in Trump's own words, he kept downplaying it. At one point, he called this a hoax. We're up to 1,000 deaths a day. We're expecting 16,000, 18,000 New Yorkers to die. And Trump went from this is going to go away in April, it's April, to we're going to try and keep it down to 240,000 deaths. 240,000 deaths is massive, considering that this disease has a 2 to 3% fatality rate. For 240,000 people to die, that means millions of people in the hospital. And the system down here is just simply not equipped to handle that. The system here can't handle what's happening now, and we're just at the beginning.
And meantime, you're taking a data today. It sounds like your son's 7. He's home all the time now instead of going to school and museums and ball games. How's that been for you all?
Well, on that side, I mean, to look at the brightest possible side of this, we actually were as prepared for this as we could have been. But Liam he was diagnosed as being on the spectrum. It helps that he recently had a birthday just before all of this happened, and I was at Toy Fair at the Javits Center, which is now a field hospital. I work with toy companies, do reviews and stuff, so I've got this box of fresh, like Lego and Playmobil and robotic sets. And
I'm sure it's in some ways a great distraction for you as parents as well. Well, Chad, thanks very much for talking to us this morning and giving us this picture of your life there in New York and how the city is both coping and soldiering on. Much appreciated.
Thank you for thinking of us.
That's Chad McDonald.